39 ivory balloons, 42 guests, a country club room I never booked, flowers I never smelled before they were paid for, and a lemon cake with my baby's name written in gold frosting before my husband and I had even announced it. I was 7 months pregnant, sitting at the head table in a pale blue dress, while my mother-in-law, Bellamy Stroud, stood in front of every woman she wanted to impress and smiled like she was blessing me. Bellamy had that kind of smile older Southern women learn after 30 years of church lunches, charity boards, and private cruelty. Warm from a distance, cold up close. She lifted a sealed envelope in the air and said, "I made something honest for our mother-to-be." Then she placed it in my hands like it was a prayer. I opened it in front of everyone. The first page said, 39 reasons my son should leave his wife before this baby ruins his life. The room went silent. My husband Callan stopped breathing beside me, and Bellamy kept smiling because she thought that was the worst page in the envelope. She was wrong. Page 40 was not a reason. Page 40 was her confession. And I had known about it for 6 days. My name is Juniper Voss. I was 31 then, a night shift respiratory therapist in Bowling Green, Kentucky, married to Callan Stroud, a high school history teacher with kind eyes and a terrible habit of saying, "That's just how mom talks." Bellamy Stroud owned 3 rental houses, chaired 2 church committees, and acted like the Stroud name was a royal bloodline instead of a family with unpaid property taxes and secrets under every rug. From the first Sunday dinner, she looked at me like I had walked into the wrong room. She called me Callan's little wife instead of Juniper. She corrected my table manners in front of guests. She said my family was simple people because my father repaired farm equipment and my mother cut hair in a converted garage behind our house. When I got pregnant, Bellamy did not look happy first. She looked strategic. She asked if I planned to stop working. I said no. She asked if I understood that Stroud babies needed proper raising. I said proper raising included a mother who could pay bills. Her smile tightened right there. That was the first crack in the glass. By the time the baby shower came around, Bellamy had taken over everything. I wanted 12 people in our backyard, paper plates, grocery store cupcakes, and folding chairs under the oak tree. Bellamy booked the Magnolia Room at Briar Ridge Country Club. She invited her bridge group, her church friends, her real estate contacts, and 3 women who had not spoken to me once in my life. Only 6 of my people were invited, and 2 of them were seated near the kitchen doors like extra luggage. My mother, Althea, sat at the back with her purse in her lap, watching Bellamy the way a woman watches a dog she already knows might bite. I kept telling myself, it is one afternoon. Smile, thank people, protect your peace. But my peace had already been attacked before I ever walked into that room. 6 days earlier, I had found the envelope. Not because I was snooping, because Bellamy asked me to stop by her house and pick up a box of family baby blankets. She said belonged to Callan. She was at a showing. Her side door was unlocked. The box sat in the hallway, but her office printer was blinking red, making that angry little sound printers make when they are begging for attention. I stepped in to turn it off, and there it was in the tray. A stack of pages, freshly printed. The top sheet reading 39 reasons my son should leave his wife. My hands went cold. I should have walked away. But there are moments in life when God, instinct, or plain survival tells you to look. So I looked. Reason number 4. She has no refinement. Reason number 9. She works nights and cannot keep a proper home. Reason number 16. Her mother runs a beauty shed and her father smells like diesel. Reason number 27. She trapped Callan with a baby. Reason 35. She will drain the Stroud family dry. I read every line standing in that office with my daughter kicking under my ribs. Each sentence was meant to cut me open in public. But then I reached the last page. The last page was not part of the list. It was an email printed by mistake and stapled behind the stack. From Bellamy to a woman named Laurel Hensley. Laurel was Callan's old girlfriend from college, the one Bellamy used to mention whenever she wanted to remind me there had once been a better match. The email said, "Laurel, after the shower, things should be clear. Once Juniper sees the family does not accept her, she may leave before the baby comes. I have spoken with Mr. Derek Pruitt about protecting the Stroud Trust and keeping the Fairlane house from being claimed by her. Callan will need comfort. Your hotel is booked for Monday. He does not know the real reason you are coming. Let me handle the first blow." I read it once, then again. Then I photographed every page. I checked the pictures. I saved them to my cloud. I put the pages back exactly where they were, took the blanket box, and drove home without crying. If you have ever been called dramatic by people who were quietly destroying you, you understand why I did not confront her that day. Private truth can be denied. Public truth has witnesses. Stay with me, because this is where Bellamy's own plan turned around and walked back toward her. The shower began like a beautiful lie. Pink punch, tiny sandwiches, gold napkins, women touching my belly without asking. Bellamy floating from table to table like the queen of an event she had stolen from me. Callan sat beside me, confused but trying to be cheerful. My sister Morel texted me from the back table. "Do you want me to get you out?" I wrote back, "Not yet." That was the hardest part. Not the insult. Not the fear. The waiting. I had to let Bellamy become brave enough to expose herself. So I played the games. I guessed the baby photos. I opened the gifts. I thanked women who had no idea they were about to become witnesses. Then Bellamy stood, tapped her fork against a glass, and lifted the envelope. "Every young wife needs guidance," she said. "And sometimes love means telling the truth." She placed the envelope in my hands. Her eyes were shining, not with tears, with victory. I opened it slowly. I wanted every person in that room to see that my hands were steady. I pulled out the first page and read the title out loud. 39 Reasons My Son Should Leave His Wife Before This Baby Ruins His Life. A woman at table 2 gasped. Someone whispered, "Bellamy." My mother stood halfway up, but I looked at her and shook my head. "Not yet." Bellamy lifted her chin and said, "Read the rest, Juniper. Let everyone hear what we have all been too polite to say." That was her first mistake. She thought silence meant agreement. It did not. It meant people were finally seeing her without the church smile. Callan took the papers from me. At first he looked confused, like his mind was refusing to accept what his eyes were reading. Then his face changed. Page 1 made him pale. Page 2 made his jaw tighten. By page 3, his hand was shaking. "Mom," he said, voice low. "What is wrong with you?" Bellamy said, "I am saving you." Then I said the sentence I had been holding for 6 days. "Callan, before you give those back, read the last page." The room turned colder than the punch bowl. Callan flipped to page 40. His eyes moved across the email. Once. Twice. His face did not go red. It went still. That was worse. Bellamy finally looked nervous. "That page is private," she said. Callan lifted it in the air. "Private?" His voice carried across the whole room. "You invited Laurel Hensley here 2 days after my wife's baby shower. You booked her hotel. You spoke to a lawyer about cutting my wife and my child out of the trust. You planned to humiliate Juniper in public, then send my ex-girlfriend in like a replacement part." The whispers broke open. One of Bellamy's church friends covered her mouth. A man near the door stood up and left. My mother sat back down slowly, not because she was calm, but because she knew I had already loaded the truth, and Bellamy had just pulled the trigger herself. Bellamy tried to recover. People like her always do. You do not understand family assets, she said. You do not understand legacy. Callan turned toward her, and for the first time in our marriage, he did not sound like a son asking permission to feel hurt. He sounded like a husband. My wife is not a threat to this family, you are. Bellamy flinched like he had slapped her. He kept going. Juniper works 12-hour nights helping people breathe. She comes home exhausted and still asks about my day. She paid half our down payment from money she saved before she ever met me. She never asked you for a dime. And you stood here, in front of her mother, her friends, and our unborn daughter, and called her a trap. He tore the list in half. The sound cracked through the room. Then he tore it again and laid the pieces on the cake table, right beside the gold letters spelling our baby's name. There are your reasons, he said. Keep them. We are leaving. But Bellamy was not finished losing. Her daughter, Sarah, who had been sitting beside her all afternoon with a tight little smile, suddenly said, Callan, Mom only did what everyone was thinking. Every eye moved to her. Callan looked at his sister. You helped write it? Sarah's mouth opened, then closed. Bellamy did not save her. That silence answered for both of them. Callan picked up one torn page and read, Reason 29. Juniper will never be a real Stroud woman. He looked at Sarah. That sounds like you. Sarah's face folded. She had spent years borrowing Bellamy's money, living in Bellamy's guest cottage, letting Bellamy raise her sons when her second marriage failed. Now she had helped write a public punishment for the only woman in the family who had never punished her back. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But pity is not the same as permission. We left that shower with no cake, no balloons, and no apology. My mother walked on one side of me, Callan on the other, like they were carrying me through a storm without touching my feet. In the parking lot, Callan broke down. Not loud, not dramatic. Just one hand on the car roof, head bowed, saying, I should have protected you sooner. I told him the truth. You protected us today. 3 days later, he changed the locks. 1 week later, he called Derek Pruitt's office and confirmed Bellamy had started paperwork to restructure the trust, but had not completed it. Laurel Hensley sent one message. I am sorry. Your mother made it sound like your marriage was already over. Callan deleted it. Then he blocked her. Bellamy sent 12 texts, each one a different costume. Victim, mother, Christian woman, widow, grandmother. None of them said I was wrong, so none of them opened our door. Our daughter, Elowen, was born 5 weeks later, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, with Callan's dark hair and my stubborn mouth. Bellamy was not in the waiting room. Sarah sent flowers with no card. My mother held Elowen first after Callan and me, and she whispered, You come from women who stay standing. 6 months later, Bellamy finally mailed a letter. Not a text. Not a performance. A real letter. It said she had spent her whole life trying to prove she belonged to a family that once rejected her, and somewhere along the way, she became the woman who had hurt her. I read it twice. I did not forgive her fully that day. Real forgiveness is not a light switch. It is a locked gate. And sometimes people have to stand outside it long enough to understand why it was locked. I still have the photos of those pages. Not because I plan to use them again. Because sometimes proof is not for revenge. Sometimes proof is for the part of you that still wonders if it was really that bad. It was. 39 reasons, 1 mistaken email, 42 witnesses, and a husband who finally saw the difference between honoring his mother and obeying her cruelty. Bellamy gave me a list of reasons I did not belong. Page 40 gave everyone the only reason that mattered. I was not the woman breaking that family. I was the woman who refused to let it break me. If you have ever been smiled at in public by someone who was sharpening a knife in private, leave a comment. And if you stayed calm long enough for the truth to speak, then you already know. Sometimes revenge does not need shouting. Sometimes it only needs one page they forgot to remove. Commentary, discussion, explanation, and lessons. Now let's slow down and talk about what really happened in this story, because this was not just a baby shower scene. This was not only about one envelope, one rude mother-in-law, or one family argument in front of guests. This story was about control. It was about quiet disrespect that kept growing because nobody stopped it early. And it was also about a woman who did not scream, did not beg, and did not lose herself when someone tried to destroy her in public. Juniper walked into that baby shower already knowing the truth. That is very important. She was not surprised by the envelope. She was not weak in that moment. She was prepared. For 6 days, she carried the proof quietly. She knew Bellamy had written a cruel list about her. She knew Bellamy had contacted Callan's old girlfriend. She knew Bellamy had spoken to a lawyer about protecting family money and pushing Juniper out. But instead of reacting too early, Juniper waited. That waiting was not fear. That waiting was strategy. And this is where the story becomes powerful. Bellamy wanted an audience. She wanted people to watch Juniper break. She wanted the room to believe that Juniper was not good enough, not refined enough, not worthy enough to be part of the Stroud family. Bellamy thought public humiliation would give her power. But public humiliation is dangerous when the truth is stronger than the performance. The same room she prepared for Juniper's shame became the room where Bellamy exposed herself. The envelope was supposed to be a weapon, but because Bellamy was arrogant, careless, and too confident in her control, she left the most important proof inside it. Page 40 changed everything. That page showed this was not just a mother-in-law being emotional. This was a plan. She had planned the insult, planned the pressure, planned the old girlfriend's return, and even planned the financial side. That made the situation much bigger than family drama. It became betrayal with evidence. Callan's reaction also matters. For a long time, he had been the kind of husband who said, "That is just how mom is." Many people understand this. Sometimes families excuse bad behavior because it has been happening for years. They call it personality. They call it tradition. They call it love. But disrespect does not become love just because it comes from a parent. Callan finally saw that protecting his wife did not mean hating his mother. It meant choosing the family he had created. One of the strongest moments in the story is when Callan says his wife is not a threat to the family. His mother is. That line hits hard because it turns the whole story around. Bellamy kept acting like Juniper was the danger. But the real danger was Bellamy's need to control everyone. She was not protecting the family. She was protecting her image, her power, and her version of what the family should look like. This story also shows how old pain can become new cruelty. Bellamy had once been rejected by her own mother-in-law. She knew what humiliation felt like. She knew how it felt to be treated like an outsider. But instead of breaking that cycle, she repeated it. That is a serious lesson. Pain does not automatically make people kind. Sometimes pain makes people controlling. Sometimes the person who was hurt becomes the person who hurts others, unless they choose to heal. Juniper's strength was different. She did not try to look powerful. She did not make a big speech. She stayed calm because she understood something Bellamy did not understand. Truth does not need to be loud. It only needs to be seen clearly. Juniper let Bellamy's own words speak. That is why the revenge felt strong. It was not childish revenge. It was not shouting revenge. It was evidence-based revenge. Quiet, clean, and impossible to deny. There is also a lesson about boundaries. After the shower, Callan changed the locks. That action may sound simple, but it means something deep. A boundary is not always a dramatic fight. Sometimes a boundary is a locked door. Sometimes it is not answering every message. Sometimes it is saying, "You can meet my child when you take responsibility for what you did." Boundaries are not cruelty. Boundaries are protection. Another important lesson is that forgiveness cannot be forced. Bellamy later wrote a letter, but Juniper did not instantly open the gate again. That feels real. In real life, an apology does not erase damage in one day. Trust has to be rebuilt slowly. People who hurt others often want quick forgiveness because it makes them feel clean again. But the person who was hurt gets to decide the pace of healing. So what do we learn from Juniper's story? First, do not ignore small disrespect when it keeps repeating. Small insults can grow into big attacks. Second, when someone tries to twist the truth, evidence matters. Keep records. Stay calm. Do not let emotions make you lose the facts. Third, a strong marriage needs protection from outside control, even when that control comes from family. And finally, never believe that staying quiet means you are weak. Sometimes quiet people are not silent because they are scared. They are silent because they are watching, learning, and waiting for the right moment. This story is emotional because many people have lived some version of it. Maybe not with a baby shower, maybe not with an envelope, maybe not with page 40. But many people know what it feels like to be smiled at in public and attacked in private. Many people know what it feels like to be called dramatic when they are actually seeing the truth clearly. Juniper's story reminds us that dignity is not about never being hurt. Dignity is about refusing to let someone else's cruelty define who you are. At the end, Juniper did not win because Bellamy lost face. She won because she kept her family, her self-respect, and her voice. She walked out of that room without begging anyone to believe her. The proof did that for her. And maybe that is the biggest message of this story. When someone writes reasons why you do not belong, do not waste your life trying to answer every line. Sometimes one truth is enough to tear the whole list apart.